Good morning. Welcome to our service from the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. I'm Julie Caros, and I am co-chair of the Worship Committee and a member of the Web Committee. It's wonderful to see you all here this morning in the Great Hall and online. Thank you to everyone who's helping make the service happen this morning. Children are welcome in the Great Hall, and we also have activities and childcare downstairs if you decide now or later in the service that it would be a better option for you. If you are new or returning after a time away, we're very glad you're here. Feel free to fill out a blue welcome card, which you can put in the offering plate later in the service. There is also an online version of that you'll find through the link in the chat. We'll put you on our email list so you can receive information about all our activities. We strive to be a congregation that welcomes people of all ages, races, religious beliefs, backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender identities, and abilities. We belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we are guided and inspired by its values and principles. Our values and principles move us to remember that we in Northampton inhabit unceded land of the Pocumtuck and Nipmuc peoples. They remind us to acknowledge our responsibility to face the legacies of dispossession and systemic racism that are part of our collective history, even as we also affirm and celebrate the legacies that inspire us. If you are on Zoom, we ask that you please keep your videos off except during the greeting. Kate Kruckmeyer now has a brief announcement for us from the Board of Trustees.
Good morning. The Board of Trustees is calling a special congregational meeting on September 10th to discuss and hopefully approve an expenditure of up to $110,000 for a major project to make our society more carbon-free. This work, which we are calling the Building a Carbon-Free Society project, will replace our aging gas furnaces with heat pumps. This project meets one of the major goals of our strategic plan, and we are moving this project forward now because the furnaces which heat the Great Hall are unlikely to make it through this winter. House and Property, Climate Action, and Finance Committees will host sessions in the next 2 weeks to answer your questions about the project and funding. One information session will be held in person after the service next Sunday, September 3rd, and the second will be held on Wednesday evening, September 6th, via Zoom. Please keep an eye on your emails for more information about this exciting project, and mark your calendar for our important congregational meeting on Sunday, September 10th, immediately after the service. You'll be able to participate in that meeting in person or via Zoom. Thank you, and we'll see you on Sunday, September 10th. And now we'll begin our service.
Come to the dinner call, the table is laden high. Fat bellies and hungry little ones, tuck your napkins in and take your share. Some get the gravy and some get the gristle. Some get the marrow bone and some get nothing, though there's plenty to spare. I took my share down to the sea, paper plates and Javex bottles on the tide. Seagulls come down and squawk at me, down where the water's Some turn to Jesus and some turn to heroin. Some turn to rambling round, looking for a clean sky and a drinking stream. Some watch the paint peel off and some watch their kids grow up. Some watch their stocks and bonds, waiting for that big deal American dream. I took my dream down by the sea, Yankee yachts and lobster pots and sunshine and logs and sails and shell oil pails, dogs and tugs and summertime. Back in the banquet line, angry young people crying. Who let the greedy in and who left the needy out? Who made this salty soup? Tell him we're very hungry now for a sweeter fare. In the cookie I read, some get the gravy, some get the gristle, some get the marrow bone, and some get nothing, though there's plenty to spare.
The opening words exist in many versions, but this is the version I knew in childhood. The rain is raining all around. It falls on the just and the unjust fellow, but it falls on the just more than on the unjust, for the unjust hath the just's umbrella.
Good morning, everyone. Today's words for the chalice lighting come to us from the works of Audre Lorde. Poetry is not a luxury. It is the vital necessity of our existence. It is the way we name the nameless, so it can be thought.
Please rise and sing hymn number 1, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire, number 34 in the gray hymnal.
You'll have to stand up again. Now it's time for us to greet one another. If you're on Zoom, you're invited to turn on your videos, wave, and say hello in the chat. And it's helpful to watch on gallery view. And do you want to decide when to end this and ring the bell, or?
Hello, everybody on Zoom.
Hello, hello.
Don't forget to mute yourselves after the greeting.
Okay.
It's been good to see everyone and say hello. Please remember to turn off your videos if you're on Zoom.
Good morning. It's so good to see all of you here at our annual August poetry service. Before I begin, I want to thank my fellow readers, Naomi Klayman, Joanna Brown, and Janet Spongberg. They don't only read, but also help me make choices about which poems out of the far too many that I collect to include. Thanks also to Julie Caros, who as service liaison calmly coped with my many last-minute changes. Also, thanks to Jenny, Dave, and Kathy, who are bringing you this service at home. And finally, deep thanks to Paige Graham for her beautiful, thoughtful, and moving musical presence. The theme I chose for this year's service is justice, but perhaps inevitably it is far more heavily weighted toward injustice. Poets are moved to bear witness and to appeal to us to open our eyes and hearts to what matters, whether it be love or beauty or suffering. I think most often we conceive justice or injustice as a social edifice governing the distribution of goods, power, freedom, and by extension, the benefit or harm that flows from them. Thus, we think about the institutions that manage those distributions: a capitalist economy, a body of law, a dominant ideology. But it's good to bear in mind that very small children and even some animals have an innate understanding of fairness that doesn't depend on society. Evolutionary anthropologists have observed that toddlers, monkeys, and crows alike expect equal distribution of treats and are upset when they don't get it or when others don't get it. There's something in us that accords with Anne Frank's belief that people are basically good at heart. The philosopher Elaine Scarry has argued that past toddlerhood, we are moved toward justice by beauty. We are taken out of ourselves by beauty, and we're grateful and thrilled. And this makes us generous. I hope you will think about beauty as we read today's poems. No matter how terrible the experiences of these poets, or how dark the world they describe, each one of these poems is a gift of witness. Each one is a tiny moment of triumph over injustice. For what we can describe, evoke, shape, and even beautify has failed to destroy our spirit. I have structured this service in 3 segments. The opening poems are the hardest ones to hear. The injustice to which they testify breaks our hearts. Here we have refugees, prisoners, non-persons, the animals we are driving to extinction, the dispossessed, the hunted down. The 4 of us reading these poems are fortunate never to have suffered these experiences. But that isn't what these poems ask of us. They ask us to listen, to imagine, and to care. The writer of the first poem, W.H. Auden, was not himself a Jew fleeing Nazi Germany, as are the refugees in his poem, but he cared deeply about their fate and makes us feel it. Refugee Blues, W.H. Auden. Say this city has 10 million souls. Some are living in mansions, some are living in holes. Yet there's no place for us, my dear, yet there's no place for us. Once we had a country and we thought it fair. Look in the atlas and you'll find it there. We cannot go there now, my dear. We cannot go there now. In the village churchyard, there grows an old yew. Every spring it blossoms anew. Old passports can't do that, my dear. Old passports can't do that. The consul banged the table and said, if you've got no passport, you're officially dead. But we are still alive, my dear. But we are still alive. Went to a committee. They offered me a chair, asked me politely to return next year. But where shall we go today, my dear? Where shall we go today? Came to a public meeting. The speaker got up and said, if we let them in, they'll steal our daily bread. He was talking of you and me, my dear. He was talking of you and me. Thought I heard the thunder rumbling in the sky. It was Hitler over Europe saying, they must die. Oh, we were in his mind, my dear. Oh, we were in his mind. Saw a poodle in a jacket fastened with a pin. Saw a door opened and a cat let in. But they weren't German Jews, my dear. But they weren't German Jews. Went down the harbor and stood upon the quay. Saw the fish swimming as if they were free. Only 10 feet away, my dear. Only 10 feet away. Walked through a wood, saw the birds in the trees. They had no politicians and sang at their ease. They weren't the human race, my dear. They weren't the human race. Dreamed I saw a building with 1,000 floors, 1,000 windows, and 1,000 doors. Not one of them was ours, my dear. Not one of them was ours. Stood on a great plain in the falling snow. 10,000 soldiers marched to and fro, looking for you and me, my dear, looking for you and me.
The next poem, Transported to Another Time, was written by Steve Champion. The poet was a prisoner in San Quentin, where he had been on death row since 2006. We were unable to find out any public mention of him after 2018, so we don't know his whereabouts at the present time. I'm seated on the auction block of the courtroom. Curious spectators wait to witness a legal lynching. The court stenographer chronicles every spoken word. History will not forget this day. Waist chains gird my wrists and waists, lay shackles fastened to my ankles. I'm transported to another time when men hunted men, cruelly enslaving them. Not as prisoners of war, but for profits. I'm a commodity reduced to invisibility, where batteries of neuropsychologists and psychiatrists are paid thousands of dollars, not to testify about my humanity, but about my saneness, my fitness to be tried, to be executed. Every morning the sun rises, I chant an African battle hymn. Every evening the sun sets, I chant a freedom song. I'm stronger today than I was yesterday, but not as strong as I will be tomorrow. Victory is mine. County jail buses are vessels containing black, brown, and white bodies. I am transported to another time where slave ships have morphed into slave buses, where slave fort is the new prison fort, where a whip, a rope, a chain utilized to punish, brutalize, and control are updated to tasers, pepper sprays, and stun guns, commanded by men and women who wear green, the color of money, the color of greed. I'm transported to another time when I'm poked and prodded, flanked by armed guards, misdirected, and directed to kneel, to be still. And when the shackles come unclamped, I am not free to walk out of prison, but into a cage, another fort, where I sleep until I am transported to the plantation again.
This is Hunter's Moon by Molly Fisk. Mid-December, dusk, and the sky slips down the rungs of its blue ladder into indigo. A late quarter moon hangs in the air above the ridge like a broken plate and shines on us all. On the new deputy, almost asleep in his 4x4, lulled by the crackling song of the dispatcher. On the bartender, slowly wiping a glass and racking it, one eye checking the game. It shines down on the fox's red and gray life as he stills, a shadow beside someone's gate, listening to winter. Its pale gaze caresses the lovers, curled together under a quilt, dreaming alone, and shines on the scattered ashes of terrible fires, on the owl's black flight, on the whelks, on the murmuring kelp, on the whale that washed up 6 weeks ago at the base of the dunes, and it shines on the backhoe that buried her.
I'm going to be reading a poem by Blas Manuel de Luna called Bent to the Earth. Thank you, Jenny. They had hit Reuben with the high beams, had blinded him so that the van he was driving, full of Mexicans going to pick tomatoes, would have to stop. Reuben spun the van into an irrigation ditch, spun the 5-year-old me awake to immigration officers, their batons already out, already looking for the soft spots on the body, to my mother being handcuffed and dragged to a van, to my father trying to show them our green cards. They let us go, But Alvaro was going back. So was his brother Fernando. So was their sister, Sonia. Their mother did not escape, and so was going back. Their father was somewhere in the field and was free. There were no great truths revealed to me then, no wisdom given to me by anyone. I was a child who had seen what a polished wood could do to a face, who had seen his father about to lose the one he loved, who had lost some friends who would never return, who, later that morning, bent to the earth and went to work.
The next poem is by Dante Collins, a remarkable, powerful young poet I had not met until this service. He is 24 years old. What the Dead Know by Heart. Lately, when asked, "How are you?" I respond with a name no longer living: Rakia, Jamar, Sandra. I am alive by luck at this point. I wonder often if the gun that will unmake me is yet made. What white birth will bury me? How many bullets, like a flock of blue jays, will come carry my black to its final bed? Which photo will be used to water down my blood? Today I did not die, and there is no God or law to thank. The bullet missed my head and landed in another. Today I passed a mirror and did not see a body. Instead, a suggestion, a debate, a blank post-it note there looking back. I haven't enough room to both rage and weep. I go to cry and each tear turns to steam. I say I matter and a ghost white hand appears over my mouth.
Anchorage by Joy Harjo. This is written for Audre Lorde. This city is made of stone, of blood and fish. There are Chugach mountains to the east and Whale and Seal to the west. It hasn't always been this way because glaciers, who are ice ghosts, create oceans, carve earth, and shape this city here by the sound. They swim backwards in time. Once a storm of boiling earth cracked open the streets, threw open the town. It's quiet now, but underneath the concrete is the cooking earth, and above that, air, which is another ocean, where spirits we can't see are dancing, joking, getting full on roasted caribou, and the praying goes on, extends out. Nora and I go walking down 4th Avenue and know it is all happening. On a park bench, we see someone's Athabascan grandmother folded up, smelling like 200 years of blood and piss, her eyes closed against some unimagined darkness, where she is buried in an ache in which nothing makes sense. We keep on breathing, walking, but softer now, the clouds whirling in the air above us. What can we say that would make us understand better than we already do? Except to speak of her home and claim her as our own history, and know that our dreams don't end here 2 blocks away from the ocean, where our hearts still batter away at the muddy shore. And I think of the 6th Avenue jail, of mostly Native and Black men, where Henry told about being shot at 8 times outside a liquor store in LA. But when the car sped away, he was surprised he was alive. No bullet holes, man, and 8 cartridges strewn on the sidewalk all around him. Everyone laughed at the impossibility of it, but also the truth. Because who would believe the fantastic and terrible story of all of our survival, those who were never meant to survive.
Our generosity makes everything we do possible, and it helps us support organizations and movements in the greater community. Half of the proceeds of each week's offering support the Society's operating budget, and half are shared outside our walls. The organizations we are currently supporting are listed on the screen. If you are participating on Zoom or YouTube, you can mail in a check or donate online. The link is in the chat. Our morning offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Gather up, gather up in the arms of your pity. The sick, the depraved, the desperate, the tired, all the scum of your weary city, gather up in the arms of your pity. Gather up in the arms of your love, those who expect no love from
Injustice is by definition unfairly distributed. Even so, I believe that in an unjust society, everyone suffers, with the possible exception of people incapable of compassion, as sociopaths are said to be. The rest of us have to endure some level of uneasiness, shame, sorrow, or outrage. Perhaps you know the story by Ursula K. Le Guin, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. In the story, the narrator describes the wonderful sunlit city of Omelas, where there are no rulers, everyone is equal, everyone is living a delightful, satisfying life of apparent perfection. But there's a terrible bargain underlying this utopia. It depends on the miserable, squalid imprisonment of a single child who can never be freed. The children of Omelas learn about this child when they come of age, and each in turn is horrified. But then almost all of them accept the situation and rationalize it and try to forget it. And some few walk out of Omelas into darkness with a sense of purpose and are never seen again. It's a fable, of course, but resonant for us. The next set of poems is about the pain we feel as citizens of this unjust world, where our own comfort and safety is purchased by so many terrible bargains, and there is no walking out. Some of these are poems you may remember having heard me read before. That's because I love them. I hope you don't mind. This is In California During the Gulf War by Denise Levertov. But of course it could be any war. Among the blight-killed eucalyptus, among trees and bushes rusted by Christmas frosts, the yards and hillsides exhausted by 5 years of drought, certain airy white blossoms punctually reappeared, and dense clusters of pale pink, dark pink, a delicate abundance. They seemed like guests arriving joyfully on the accustomed festival day, unaware of the year's events, not perceiving the sackcloth others were wearing. To some of us, the dejected landscape consorted well with our shame and bitterness. Skies ever blue, daily sunshine disgusted us like smile buttons. Yet the blossoms, clinging to thin branches more lightly than birds alert for flight, lifted the sunken heart even against its will. But not as symbols of hope. They were flimsy as our resistance to the crimes committed again in our name. And yes, they return year after year, and yes, they briefly shone with serene joy over the dark glare of evil days. They are, and their presence is quietness ineffable. And the bombings were, no doubt will be, that quiet, that huge cacophony, simultaneous. No promise was being accorded. The blossoms were not doves. There was no rainbow. And when it was claimed the war had ended, it had not ended.
Good Bones by Maggie Smith. Life is short, though I've kept this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible, and for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful.
This poem is by Bob Hickok. Calling him back from layoff. I called a man today. After he said hello and I said hello, came a pause during which it would have been confusing to say hello again. So I said, "How are you doing?" And guess what? He said fine and wondered aloud how I was. And it turns out I'm okay. He was on the couch watching cars painted with ads for Budweiser, follow cars painted with ads for Tide around an oval that's a metaphor for life, because most of us run out of gas and settle for getting drunk in the stands and shouting at someone in a t-shirt, "We want crowd on our dog." I said he could have his job back. And during the pause that followed, his whiskers scrubbed the mouthpiece clean and his breath passed in and out in the tidal fashion popular with mammals until he broke through with the words, "How soon? Thank you. Oh my God," which crossed his lips and drove through the wires on the backs of ions as one long word, as one hard prayer of relief meant to be heard by the sky. When he began to cry, I tried with the shape of my silence to say I understood, but each confession of fear and poverty was more awkward than what you learn in the shower. After he hung up, I went outside and sat with one hand in the bower of the other and thought, if I turn my head to the left, it changes the song of the oriole. And if I give a job to one stomach, other forks are naked. And if tonight a steak sizzle is in his kitchen, do the 7 other people staring at their phones hear?
The next poem is Morning on the Island by Carolyn Forche. The lights cross across the water are the waking city. The water shimmers with imaginary fish. Not far from here lie the bones of conifers washed from the sea and piled by wind. Some mornings I walk upon them, bone to bone, as far as the lighthouse. A strange beetle has eaten most of the trees. It may have come here on the ships playing music in the harbor, or it was always here, a winged jewel, but in the past was kept still by the cold of a winter that no longer comes. There is an owl living in the firs behind us, but he is white, meant to be mistaken for snow burdening a bough. They say he is the only owl remaining. I hear him at night, listening for the last of the mice and asking, who of no other owl?
America by Tony Hoagland. Then one of the students with blue hair and a tongue stud says that America is for him a maximum security prison whose walls are made of Radio Shacks and Burger Kings and MTV episodes where you can't tell the show from the commercials. And as I consider how to express how full of shit I think he is, he says that even when he's driving to the mall in his Isuzu Trooper with a gang of his friends, letting rap music pour over them like a boiling jacuzzi full of ball-peen hammers, even then he feels buried alive, captured and suffocated in the folds of the thick satin quilt of America. And I wonder if this is a legitimate category of pain or whether he is just spin doctoring a better grade. And then I remember that when I stabbed my father in the dream last night, It was not blood, but money that gushed out of him, bright green $100 bills spilling from his wounds. And this is the weird part, he gasped, "Thank God, those Ben Franklins were clogging up my heart. And so I perish happily, freed from that which kept me from my liberty." Which was when I knew it was a dream, since my dad would never speak in rhymed couplets. And I look at the student with his acne and cell phone and phony ghetto clothes, and I think, I am asleep in America too, and I don't know how to wake myself either. And I remember what Marx said near the end of his life. I was listening to the cries of the past when I should have been listening to the cries of the future. But how could he have imagined 100 channels of 24-hour cable, or what kind of nightmare it might be, when each day you watch rivers of bright merchandise run past you, and you are floating in your pleasure boat upon this river, even while others are drowning underneath you, and you see their faces twisting in the surface of the waters, and yet it seems to be your own hand which turns the volume higher. We will now have the relief of a hymn. Please rise as you are able and join in singing hymn number 127, "Can I See Another's Woe?" William Blake, whose poem we have just sung, is right, of course, that we can't fail to feel compassion. And that is the hope that we have, as innate to us as any other quality we possess. The sympathy and love we feel for each other, and for rivers and sunflowers and birds in their nests, and people we will never know, even those who have yet to be born.
Thank you. Forget by Czesław Miłosz. Forget the suffering you caused others. Forget the suffering others caused you. The waters run and run, springs sparkle and are done. You walk the earth you are forgetting. Sometimes you hear a distant refrain. What does it mean, you ask? Who is singing? A childlike sun grows warm. A grandson and a great-grandson are born. You are led by a hand once again. The names of the rivers remain with you. How endless those rivers seem. Your fields lie fallow. The city towers are not as they were. You stand at the threshold, mute.
This is Transformation by Adam Tsagayevsky. I haven't written a single poem in months. I've lived humbly, reading the paper, pondering the riddle of power and the reasons for obedience. I've watched sunsets, crimson, anxious. I've heard the birds grow quiet and nights mutinous. I've seen sunflowers dangling their heads at dusk, as if a careless hangman had gone strolling through the gardens. September's sweet dust gathered on the windowsill, and lizards hid in the bend of walls. I've taken long walks, craving one thing only: lightning, transformation, you.
The next poem is Choices by Tess Gallagher. I go to the mountainside of the house to cut saplings and clear a view to snow on the mountain. But when I look up, saw in hand, I see a nest clutched in the uppermost branches. I don't cut that one. I don't cut the others either. Suddenly, in every tree, an unseen nest where a mountain would be.
Final poem, In Any Event, by Dorian Lau. If we are fractured like stars, bred to shine in every direction, through any dimension, billions of years since and hence. I shall not lament the human, not yet. There is something more to come, our hearts a gold mine not yet plumbed, an uncharted sea. Nothing is gone forever. If we came from dust and will return to dust, then we can find our way into anything. What we are capable of is not yet known, and I praise us now in advance. Please rise and join in singing our final hymn, number 95, There is More Love Somewhere.
Somewhere
Vermeer by Wisława Szymborska. So long as that woman from the Rijksmuseum, in painted quiet and concentration, keeps pouring milk day after day from the pitcher to the bowl, the world hasn't earned the world's end.
Way over yonder is a place that I know, where I can find shelter from hunger and cold. And the sweet taste